Hello and welcome. Today, our guest in DDM DDDM podcast is a person who moved from moving pixels around in After Effects to moving the needle in the CEO of global design software company. We try to welcome Paulo Tenorio, the founder of Trakto.io. I'm just hoping that I didn't butcher your name and the name of your company. If that's sorry, but I just want to ask you, like, what are you doing right now and what you did before being this
All right. Thanks a lot, Lucas, for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure. So, I was a motion designer before. I don't know if people are used to that term, but a motion designer is someone that gets a design piece from Photoshop, let's say, and then you create an animated motion graphics piece. And that
Mhm,
translating to using 3D, 2D animation. So I spent 10 years doing that. But not only
mhm,
when you are a motion designer, you basically have to mix different techniques from illustration to design to
mhm.
3D and also compositing and VFX. And then you need to mix everything together with audio effects as well. So it's a let's say it's a crazy world about being a motion designer because you have to mix different styles, and that helped me a lot to understand how the creative process had to be improved, not only by
Mhm.
technique, but also different softwares. And that's when the idea for Trakto came to my mind.
And let's dive into the business side of things. Like basically, can you share us a time when you encounter big challenge during the creation of your company or project you've did for the clients? Like what was the challenge? What was the problem you faced?
Yeah, so let me give you a quick background story. I started my
Hmm.
career in Brazil, in Maceió, where I'm at
Hmm.
right now. Moved to São Paulo, then I got an invitation to work in the US, in Salt Lake City. Then I went to New York and finally to Los Angeles to work in Hollywood with motion design.
Hmm.
During that 10-year period, I've learned a lot how the designers were struggling to create content at scale. And,
Hmm.
most of the designers, they not only were struggling to have their own marketing materials like an updated portfolio,
Hmm.
a business proposal ready to be sent. So I came with this idea when I was living in Los Angeles, but then my dad got sick. I had to move back from LA back to my hometown. My dad unfortunately passed away after a year. I
Sorry to
was
hear that.
I decided to build this company, but it didn't start as a company. It started as an
Hmm.
idea, and I thought that would be helpful to other creative professionals. Then I went through a lot of different accelerators. The first one was Seed. It was like a unique program. And back in 2013, I spent 6 months learning about business model, what a SaaS was, how you should use data to make your decisions. So I was becoming an entrepreneur. It wasn't like all right, let's make this idea and make a bunch of money out of that. I didn't even want to charge back in the day. I didn't want to charge for anything for the users. Then I learned how important it was and to have a solid business model so I could help more professionals, more creative companies to be able to design in an easier and better way. So I spent 2014 doing two different accelerators. First was Seed. Second one was was at Plug and Play Tech Center in Silicon Valley. So I moved back to the US and I spent 4 months at Plug and Play Tech Center in Silicon Valley learning how to create a global business. And then it was like the first time that I've pivoted the product and the business model, because back in the day we were an app and we were charging just to download the app. That would be like $10 per app, and I was doing basic math. All right, if I want to have $50,000 per month in revenue, I should sell at least 5,000 new apps. But then you have the 30% fee from Apple, meaning that I'll have to sell at least like 7,500 apps per month, and that wasn't sustainable at all. And you didn't had subscription model back in 2014, 15 at any either Google Store or Google Play Store or Apple Store. You couldn't actually make a money out of that. So that's when I've pivoted to a SaaS web-based platform using Stripe to sell globally, fundraise it, and start the journey from Trakto.
How data was involved in your steps on your journey? You mentioned that you started to learn how to make data-driven decisions. I'm just curious, what was the first step and the steps after that through using data? Which data helped you?
Yeah, as a SaaS focusing on the B2C market, you have to keep track of a lot of data points in order to see if your business is gaining traction or not. So
Mm-hmm.
the first thing was like using a dashboard to be able to keep track of all the events, not only on the
Mm-hmm.
financial side, but also on the product side. So I started with the financial side. I started using Barometrics back in the day. It was a
Mm-hmm.
tool that we connected through Stripe to analyze how the MRR was growing, how was the churn, and all the metrics, time to sell, the LTV, like everything. So I kept like this dashboard open 24/7 on my computer, and that's when I saw the first numbers started like popping up, and see when I did some marketing campaigns how it affected my revenue. So I could calculate the CAC for each new client that I had, and then
Mm-hmm.
I was also keeping a close look at churn, but then I started using. At first, I was just like looking at data on an overall metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So how is the company growing the MRR?
Mm-hmm.
How is the churn? But then I started doing a deep dive on cohort analysis. That was super
Mm-hmm.
important to understand how the clients were behaving. But
Mm-hmm.
that was only on the financial side. When I went to the
Mm-hmm.
product side, I had different challenge, and I had to learn how to keep track of every single important event that my client was doing when using the product. As a design software, it's super complicated though, because you have many different steps for a client to be able to achieve a success. The North metric was the very first data, let's say, lesson that I got. Because once you
Mm-hmm.
choose the wrong North Star metric, and you keep tracking that, you might be driving a business down the road, not growing. You were thinking you were growing, but you were not growing. So analyzing the right data was the major lesson that I got. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you count a user signing in as your North Star metric, and you say
Mm-hmm.
my monthly active users or my daily active users are what's the most important, you might be deceived
Mm-hmm.
by data. So choosing what's the final goal of your product. In the case of Trakto, it was downloading, designing and downloading or publishing a design. So
Mm-hmm.
keeping the whole journey, I would see that people would log in back into the platform, but not necessarily downloading what they were creating. So that was like really insightful at the beginning, defining the correct North Star metric and then doing a cohort analysis of what kind of users were achieving that goal. Meaning that if you have
Mm-hmm.
freemium business model like Traktor had, if you mix what paid clients are doing with what freemium clients are doing, you're gonna start noticing different behaviors. Like once the users start paying, I was noticing a heavy usage on the platform. But then when the freemium was using, they might abandon after a day or two, and then you need to recover that user. But once you mix both cohorts into just like a single bunch of data, you might be deceived by the numbers. And that was also an experience. It's super hard to do the instrumentation when you're tracking all the
Mm-hmm.
events, but it's super necessary to do this planning.
I have a question. Like, did you do that by yourself, or you have some kind of help? Like, from where do you gather inspiration to choose the right metrics, choose the right tools, and make it happen? Basically.
Yeah, I was taught about data. When I went through a different accelerator down the road, that was like in
Mm-hmm.
2020, I went through the Venture City startup. They are a venture fund plus an accelerator, and they are really a data driven VC.
Mm-hmm.
And they taught me, Dave, was one of the guys that from the Venture City team. We call him Dave, the data guy, and he's like obsessed with data. And so I learned how to plan the
Mm-hmm.
instrumentation, how to actually understand what kind of events you need to track in order to see the health of your product.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such an inspiring journey with Dave learning about data. So my whole team got there, like my CTO, my
Mm-hmm.
PO, and we planned the whole instrumentation. It's super hard.
Mm-hmm.
We use it back in the day, Amplitude, to be able to track and create the dashboards. But it's not only about tracking the data. It's actually doing a deep dive analysis on what the data is telling you to do. And because of that instrumentation, we pivoted the second time from the B2C
Mm-hmm.
business model to the enterprise business model. And it was a data driven decision. It wasn't like my intention, it wasn't something that I wanted to do. It was the
Mm-hmm.
data was telling me to do that. And I think people sometimes they do not understand how powerful data can be for your decision making as a CEO, as a C level. And I strongly recommend if you have a product, start analyzing the KPIs that are the most important for your business to be healthy, and do not, because a lot of founders that I know, they don't like to see when the data is pointing another direction from what they have in mind, meaning that, all right, I think I'm doing great, this product is great, but the data is not showing that the product is that great. And
Mm-hmm.
then the founder has to look at the data constantly and then start moving the needle on what kind of on the path that you were going. So it's a lot of work, though. Data, it's gonna answer a lot of questions, and also it's gonna bring new questions for you. What you're gonna do next?
And about learning how to use data to make better decisions, I'm curious how long did it take for you to be efficient in using data and using the tools you have on your disposal?
It's an ongoing process. You never
Mm-hmm.
stop learning new tricks about data. As we move it from B2C to enterprise, I can tell you something. I felt every time that I've pivoted, it was a data driven decision, and it got better with time.
Mm-hmm.
When you pivot a business, it takes a lot of time for you to adjust your instrumentation. And
Mm-hmm.
it's an educational process from the CEO to the CTO to the whole dev team of the importance of keeping the events being tracked. And it's an educational process that the CEO must do. Being completely honest with you, I failed many times to demonstrate how important data is to my team. So I'm still learning how to communicate how important the instrumentation is. I was talking to my COO like half an hour ago about the
Mm-hmm.
report that we have to do for one of our clients, and some data is missing. And when I was looking at the backlog, they did some update on the code and they
Mm-hmm.
removed the tag from the instrumentation. But then it's too late. When you see you lost like few months of data that should be
Mm-hmm.
there and it wasn't. It's a constant learning process. It's a cat and mouse game that you have to play
Mm-hmm.
with your team to show how important data is.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna understand if you are new to this game about using data in a decision making process. You're gonna learn the hard way once you need the historical data for whatever metric you want to track. And then you see that you were not tracking and it's too late. So you lost that data. So I would say plan as early as possible
Mm-hmm.
to keep the right events. Choose your North metric, but it's not like just a once in a lifetime process. It's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work. You need to constantly do that. And I'm reminding myself to do that every quarter. I need to go to my dev team and check if the instrumentation is correct. And it's a lot of work. Data, it's amazing to see how even developers, they do not understand how important insightful data is for a business as a whole. So it's tough, but it's worth it. It's complicated and it's worth it.
And looking ahead, like what challenges do you think are going to pop up in the world of data and using data to make better decisions?
I'm already using a lot of AI to analyze data
Mm-hmm.
and bring information. Before AI, you had
Mm-hmm.
to manually actually look into the graphics, and then you go to a spreadsheet, and then you do your math, and then you try to
Mm-hmm.
mix different information. I believe right now we have as a CEO, all right, but
Mm-hmm.
it could be a product owner, it could be any kind of position. But
Mm-hmm.
imagine you have something like Notebook LLM from Google,
Mm-hmm.
a multimodal format where you can upload a bunch of different stuff and ask questions. I think data
Mm-hmm.
is all about asking questions and getting the right answers. With AI, though, I recently uploaded a bunch of data from Trakto, and I started
Mm-hmm.
asking the right questions. One of them was, so we are audited every year because one of our
Mm-hmm.
VCs, we do this process. So I got the feedback from the audit company, and I was like, all right, let me put that on Notebook LLM, mix with my financial projections, and then
Mm-hmm.
mix with the product data and
Mm-hmm.
start asking questions. And it's insane how powerful and fast it is. So
Mm-hmm.
the data game has changed on the analysis. Before, you had to make sure that you were, let's say, creating the perfect dashboard so you can make
Mm-hmm.
better decisions. Right now you can just ask data questions, and then the power of AI analyzing and giving you back results, it's amazing.
Uh, you mentioned this before, but I would like to ask you, what advice would you give someone who are just starting using data in the company, and what first step should be for them to make better decisions along the way,
If
in your
you
experience?
Yeah, I will split that the answer in three different personas. All right.
Mm-hmm.
First, if you are the CEO must always look at data to make a decision, because other than that, you're gonna have a feeling of something, but you
Mm-hmm.
might be deceived by your own thoughts, by your own mind, by different vanity metrics that you might have.
Mm-hmm.
I would say relying on data, it's one powerful way as a CEO to push his vision of what a product or the
Mm-hmm.
company could be. If you're just starting, do something. Map manually. It's a simple and powerful tool. You get screenshots of all of your app screens, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna manually give a name and highlight what you want to track from the user journey, and then you're going to
Mm-hmm.
create the perfect user journey. What do you think the user should do for your product to be successful? And then you have to split that in different moments. The first, when I'm trying to get a user to sign up, meaning that the
Mm-hmm.
landing page, how you are tracking and everything. And then after that, the first user, the first day of user, or the first, I like to call like the first mile, when
Mm-hmm.
the user just sign up. So what he should do, because if you pay attention, none of us spend a lot of time on tools that we don't engage immediately. So the first minute, it's super important, because bringing back a trial that gave up after before the first minute, it's going to be painful. So make sure that you were analyzing data. Let's say you were doing word of mouth, and then the
Mm-hmm.
users, let's say you got 100 users to try your product, but only 10 are completing. That's a 10% converting rate from visitor to trial. All right, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you, after you learn who that persona is, you do a marketing campaign to that specific persona? Will that 10% data number, it's gonna increase once you do a paid marketing campaign for your right persona. And that's like the kind of tricky thing with data that you should do. It's a constant game of looking into the data, getting back to your strategy, and then keep iterating on your product plus marketing strategy so you can grow. So I would say as a CEO, do that. But as a PO, though,
Mhm.
Imagine that you have a product to lead, and if you do not have data to make your decisions, you might be adding a lot of features that the users don't want, a lot of steps that the users hate, buttons that they are never being used. So, data for POs, product owners, are the most
Mhm.
important thing that a PO should do. And third, if you are a developer, keeping data as not something that the management team is asking. Data is
Mhm.
the most valuable thing that a business has. So if you are not sure what you should be, let's say, recording or saving on the database,
Mhm.
doing a logging, log everything. And even
Mhm.
though if the costs might increase, log everything. I would
Mhm.
say that would be my advice for these three different personas.
And let's talk about a little bit about how you are using AI. You mentioned this also before, but how you are using AI to make your work better, faster, or both.
Yeah. So Trakto, we started playing with AI in 2018, 2019, when I saw a
Mhm.
paper from Tesla that was like highlighting, doing a little mask, like a crude mask
Mhm.
around objects and people because the cars were like trying to map using camera
Mhm.
what was in front of them. I was like, dude, if they can highlight an object, it's just like a step for to remove the background from that image.
Mhm.
And with that concept in mind, I started talking to a university here, some researchers about that. That was like right when background remove BG researchers were like publishing some papers, and so I
Mhm.
integrated background removal because background removal today is default for design softwares, but in
Mhm.
2019 was something brand new, and Traktor was something unique. We were the first in the world to do that, including background removal into a design process. And it was a game changing. And I launched Traktor's background removal functionality during South by Southwest in 2019. It's on YouTube, and either Canva or Photoshop, none of the two design tool had that integrated, and we were the first to go to market. After that, I designed a whole concept about how to use AI to be able to scale and automate the design process. So using AI, it was also a way for us to pivot from B2C to B2B and be like more like
Mhm.
an enterprise software because AI right now allows us to do a lot of automation on the design process. So we are using Google's Gemini. I think it's like it's a powerful, amazing API solution. People sometimes underestimate how powerful the APIs are. OpenAI is great, but the API has some issues on reliability and also customer
Mhm.
support. And in
Mhm.
Gemini's with Vertex,
Mhm.
it's ready to grow. So I would say
Mhm.
I take it Google because of that. So we have generative speech, background removal, a lot of different functionalities from design that goes from the background diffusion and using the diffusion process to generate both images and videos at scale.
Mhm.
It's what's the game changing for Trakto. So AI, it's part of what Trakto does, and
Mhm.
it's not. Let's say Trakto is it's an AI enabled company, put
Mhm.
it that way, because as an AI first company should be doing and training models and all that stuff. We have few models,
Mhm.
but the main thing about Trakto is applying that during the design process and with the concept of automation. So that's how I'm using AI right now.
Okay, that's awesome. Jak Paulo, I'm so happy that you are the guest on the DDM.fm podcast. Thank you for sharing your amazing journey using data from the beginning to the middle, and the end will, come in the future. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all the answers you give today.
All right. Thanks a lot, Lucas, and see you, everyone.